All right, we've gone through the workspaces. Now let's have a look at artboards. Artboards are critical for any digital designer who's working with Illustrator. Sometimes you'll only need one, and there will be times when you need a lot of them. Most of the work that we'll be doing in class will require 2 artboards, especially at the beginning with all the still life work that we do. You're going to have to be doing 2 still life pieces for each assignment. I need those to be in the same document. So it's important to understand artboards just for that sake, to make sure you get that check mark done. And then it's just critical for you as you work on your own outside of class, professionally or personally. I'm going to create a new document. And this document, I'm just going to do a print 8.5 by 11. I'll change my measurement to inches, and here I have my artboards. My artboards is currently set to 1. You saw what happened if I opened a file with just 1 artboard in the last video. It just gave me 1 space to work in. So now if I do 2, I'll have 2 of them. Before I just hit OK, I want to talk about some of the other options for the artboard, and that is a bleed. This bleed allows us to specify how much of the artwork that we create that goes outside of the boundaries of our rectangle, the canvas basically, how much of that artwork would we want to include if we are going to send our work to a printer. And I would say that half of the work that I do personally ends up going to press through a printer, and it is important that I include a bleed. And the bleed, allowing us to go past the boundaries of our canvas, guarantees that when the printer does the application of the colors to the paper, that it will exceed the area that the knife is going to cut out the CD case or the sticker or whatever it is that you might be making that is being printed. And that guarantees that if the knife, the blade that does the cutting, if it's just slightly off, it's not going to, show a little bit of white because your work ended right at those boundaries of your artboard. So the bleed ends up being important, and we will only use it several times in the semester, but it's just really good to know that it's right here. And I'll put it up 1 notch. So I just clicked up once, and that's 0.125 inches, which is 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so that's all I need to worry about right now. I'm going to hit create, and you're going to see that since I chose 2 artboards, it now gave me 2 artboards in the same document. And you can now see the little red outline, or the little, I guess it's an outline. The red rectangle around the outside of the white rectangles is my bleed. And anytime you have a bleed, the artwork that exceeds the white box will be included up to that red line, and then it'll cut off. It just will be like erased. If I didn't have a bleed and I sent something to the printer based on just the 8.5 by 11, then only the artwork inside that 8.5 by 11 will be printed. So that's what the bleed is. And we'll get more into that as we get into our publication work. But what's really important to know about artboards is that now that I have 2 on this document, you can click on them and you can sort of see that, you're not going to see it on my video, but if you did it on your own, every time you click on one, a little black line shows up around the perimeter of that canvas, and that's letting you know which artboard you currently have selected. This is really only important in certain applications, like if you're copying from one artboard and pasting into another, it's good to make sure that when you are pasting into the other one that you select the one that you want to paste into, because then it'll actually apply it to that artboard, and that artwork will be associated with that artboard. If you don't, then it'll still think that you're pasting into the other artboard, but it's just over somewhere else. That'll happen, and we'll get into that. I know these things sound perhaps kind of convoluted at the beginning, but you'll know as we move forward. What's good to know about the artboard is that there's a tool for the artboard, and the tool for the artboard looks like this in the toolbar. It's a little page, and it has kind of crop marks off to the side. And if I select the artboard tool, you get a little bit of a different interaction here. It tells you which artboards are what, artboard 1, artboard 2, and you can kind of see that the selection for that has gotten a little more dynamic. You can see it better. It also has handles. The handles allow you to change the dimension of your artboard. So if you needed an artboard that was tall and skinny, you could just sort of wing it, and scale it to what you thought was appropriate. Likewise, you could, make it long and short, or you can grab a corner and make it more square. So that is affecting my artboard 1. It's not affecting artboard 2. So it's a nice thing about the artboard tool is that you can control these things independently. Now, what is also critical to know about the artboard is that there is an area in the properties panel that is also specific to the artboard. So right off the bat, it says what measurement unit do you want to use, and so we're in inches, but you could change it to pixels if you wanted to, or anything else. Sometimes if you're doing like billboards, you need to use feet. And that gets kind of really interesting. You never really thought that you'd be using such a large measurement on such a small machine. And you can then choose to edit artboards. And what that does is it takes you to the tool. And you can then do your editing. So this artboard here is shown as it's selected in my properties panel as a 3.93 by 3.79 inches width and height. So this is X and Y. That just means where it's located. Don't even pay attention to that. But what is important is the width and height. So if I knew that I needed a 5 by 5 inch, then I can just select this and say 5 by 5, and it's now made that artboard exactly 5 by 5. So there will be times when you're doing something like a sticker or a stamp or a logo or an icon or something like that, and you have a specific size you need to be working with. You can set the artboard size right there. It doesn't have to be done in the new document window. It's nice to start there as a starting point, but this is when you can do customization. Whatever you set in the new document window, every artboard will all be the same size, but if you have to do custom shapes and sizes, this is where that happens. So the other thing that can happen is if I'm selecting one of these, I can choose to duplicate it. And if I did, let's do this first. I'll have the smaller one selected. And if I hit new artboard, it's going to give me a new artboard, artboard 3, based on the one that was selected. So it gave me another 5 by 5. So here's the new artboard that I had just made. The other way of doing that would be to take the Option key and hold down the Option key and click and drag your artboard somewhere else, and now you've just duplicated it again. I'll hit undo just to do that. But if I had artboard 2 selected and I hit new artboard, it'll give me another 8.5 by 11. So there's that. I can trash artboards if I need to, just by using the trash can. It deletes it. I can change the orientation of one. So if I'm like, well, this one I want to be a landscape, I can choose landscape and it'll flip it around for me. So artboards 1, 2, and 3. I can go into artboard options now, and that opens up the artboard options window, and I can name my artboard. This gets handy. Instead of it just being 1, 2, and 3, because that can get a little confusing if you get a little intricate or elaborate with how many artboards you have. There's the specifics of its dimensions, its orientation. You can choose to show and I'll move this over, show a center mark. And if I show a center mark or crosshairs and I hit OK, boop, you can now see that on this one I have my center mark and my crosshairs. This is just a reference for you so you know where centers are, basically. Center vertical, center horizontal, and then absolute center crosshair. That's handy for just, arranging and composing your elements as you work. And there are also going to be times, perhaps during an exam, when I have you turn on crosshairs, turn on your center point, and maybe even turn on video safe, which is the other one, which basically just gives you some boundaries based on video stuff. This is not for video because it's a square, and square video doesn't really exist. But these are all things that you can turn on or off. They don't print, they don't show up. You'll never see them other than while you work. The other thing that you should know about artboards is that if you have artwork, cancel. I'm just going to draw some squares in here real quick, and I will color them. So I've got some artwork in this artboard. Under Edit Artboards, there is this check mark called Move Artwork with Artboard. What that means is that if I were to move my artboard with my artboard tool, the stuff that's in there will move with it. Okay, if I have that unchecked and I move my artboard now, that artwork just stays out in the ether, right? That will not get printed, that will not turn into a JPEG, that won't translate at all unless it's on an artboard. So this is good to know if you're just sort of doing some organization, you've got stuff in there, that's great. Also, if I were to copy that artboard, it will also copy the artwork that's in there. So this is nice if you're doing variations of a logo or type design or something like that, and you don't want to have to do the copy pasting. You can just say I want another version of that, and so you just drag or hit the plus sign over here, and you get, oops, it only works if you copy and drag it, apparently. It's how I always work. The other nice thing to know is that there are some shortcuts for viewing this stuff. So if I want to view the artboard that I'm currently working in, which is artboard 1, I have it selected. If I hit Command 0, it fills my screen with that artboard. If I want to see all my artboards, I would do Command Option 0, and it'll fill my screen with all of the artboards. Those are just nice shortcuts to know about with those artboards. So basically, that is all I'm going to cover for now, and it's something that you will definitely get more accustomed to as you work with your files. And it's nice just to play around and futz with it a little bit so that you are comfortable with those transformations and those access points. All right, thank you.